Let's go ahead and open our Bibles up to the book of Daniel, and we'll be in chapter 2 tonight. Last week, we spent time talking about the warnings that God had given Israel as a whole, and Deuteronomy is where we were reading, talking about what the Israelites needed to do to remain in favor of God. And the warnings were clear, absolutely crystal clear, that if they were to violate those by serving other gods, by forsaking God, by living like the people of the land, that they would suffer the wrath of God, but mostly suffer the lack of his favor, his protection. It goes on, we read in the how it happened and when it happened, and that was recorded, and we read part of Jeremiah, chapter 52, and we talked about some of the details, and really understanding that it's so much more than saying that Nebuchadnezzar besieged the city, and then it just goes on, because it was horrific. It was absolutely devastating, not just physically to the city, but to the people. He carries away not just 4 young people, but many young people, some of which were killed along the way, some of which didn't make the grade, and they were exterminated. And you'll see as we get into this next chapter that the people we're talking about, the conquering people, Nebuchadnezzar himself, is not shy about just taking people out. If they do not fulfill or meet his purposes, he doesn't need them, nor does he want them. And it's not a good spot to be in to somebody who's willing to yield that kind of authority and power, who has that, and who doesn't like you all of a sudden. That's a dangerous place to be. I've seen it as we've traveled around this world. I've seen how people go to different countries and thinking that their American civil rights apply to them on these different countries. You ever seen somebody do that, act like that? And that's a hard lesson sometimes, maybe even deadly at times when they do that. Well, you're dealing with somebody who doesn't care about civil rights, about human rights. It's whatever he wants and demands. A couple of things we talked about that I think are important just to remind ourselves is the way that Daniel and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they conducted themselves. Even in this terrible situation, when it came an opportunity to be loyal to God by the food they ate, they sought the ability to do just that. They were willing to take a risk, stand their ground, stand for their faith, and ask. I think there's a great lesson in that, because so often I think we feel overwhelmed, especially when it comes to us having to work in the world. It's one thing, we're safe here, and we can kind of feel safe here. We could talk about godly things and talk about rights and wrongs without too much disagreement. But you go to the world today and you start to talk about things, and you'll find quickly that you are not in a position maybe to even talk freely or exercise your faith. And so you can imagine these 4 men, when they were told to eat, they should have been just lucky they were alive, right? And getting food, and yet they stopped and stood fast for God. And it actually benefited them. So as we get into chapter 2, we're going to see how these men who had been favored by Nebuchadnezzar as he interviewed them and found that they were really amazing. And why were they amazing, by the way? Who remembers? Why were they able to have such great aptitude for learning and speaking languages and just understanding things? God blessed them. He gave them that ability. So, this is a very amazing concept, because it's consistent how God even provided for his ambassadors, his disciples, the apostles at times. And when God's there, he's always there for us. So let's go to chapter 2. We started into that last week, but we'll just pick up right at verse 1. Now, in the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that sleep left him. Maybe you've experienced that. You've had a lot of stress, or you had some kind of dream that just really frightens you. You ever dreamt somebody did something to you and you woke up mad at them? Nobody but me? I'm the only one? Yeah. What's the matter? No, don't talk to me. No. Well, Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and he doesn't like what he saw. Something about it troubled him. He had to have some kind of idea that maybe it somehow related to him, and that's why he didn't like it. If he thought it was a dream, even if it was horrific in nature, he wasn't afraid of death. He had seen death. He had caused death. He had seen carnage. He had seen bad, horrible things. Somehow he had to have just understood that somehow this must relate to him. And he doesn't like what he saw. Then he gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to the king to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. Remember the Chaldeans? Don mentioned this point this last week. You remember where Abraham's family came from? Ur of the Chaldeans, right? These were the same group of people in the same region. That's that northern, what we would call northern Iraq today. So he gets all the people that he is invested in, all the people who have the abilities to do various ways. They have this wisdom that they've gained, and they're supposed to come and help him in this effort. And he calls them all there, and they stood before the king. And the king said to them in verse 3, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. Okay, so we already kind of know how this is going. I mean, you can have people that are very, very capable of influencing people. A lot of these people who are good at supposedly telling your future or telling things about you, they have some sort of ability they'll claim. What they really are is just very trained, and they're intuitive on how to ask questions and start to tell you what is going to be the case. They can tell you about yourself, and people are all amazed by that, right? Well, do you think that these magicians and these astrologers, do you think they have a special ability to know the dreams of somebody? Or maybe they're just really good at talking and telling you some sort of favorable, discussion or what they think that might mean. Well, Nebuchadnezzar's smart enough to know that he doesn't want that tonight. At this time, he wants to know for sure what's going on, so he challenges them. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm, so don't argue with me. I'm telling you right now, I've decided. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. So I'm going to kill you. I'm not just going to kill you. I'm going to chop you up in pieces. Not him personally. He'll have his people do that. And he'll burn their homes down. So this won't just affect them individually. It's going to affect their families as well. This is what I want from you. Now, think about that. That's way different, and we mentioned this as well last week, when Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had his dreams, right? He had two dreams, and they had the same interpretation, and Joseph would come and interpret those dreams by God's power. Pharaoh actually told him the dreams first. Remember that? And this is different because Nebuchadnezzar's not as generous with that. He wants to really know, and that's a difference. Maybe Pharaoh wanted to know, but he wasn't as concerned as to what was going to happen. But for sure, Nebuchadnezzar, he makes this a very, very difficult situation. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. So he sets it clear that, look, if you don't even tell me the dream, I'm going to kill you. If you tell me the dream, I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to exalt you and honor you in a great way. And that's going to play an important part in just the next chapter, because there should be a logical question that will come to us as we get into chapter 3. But just remember that honor will come to somebody. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. They're bold, aren't they? Why are they being so bold as to plea with the king? They're done, right? I mean, you might as well try to get him to, relent a bit and give you some information. Let me give you a hint, right? I got to do something because I don't know what you dreamt. I have no ability to know what you dreamt because you know what I am? I'm an actor. I'm an entertainer is what I really am. These guys that someone just mentioned about a magic show tonight, they saw, well, magic's not real. That's the whole fun part about it, is it makes you think it's real, right? If a magician, if you could see what they do and understand what they're doing all the time, you're not impressed. Well, I could do that, right? But when you're looking at it and your mind is just kind of like, what just happened? How did he do that? How did she do that? That's the fun about this. Well, these guys, that's all they are. They're sleight of hand people. They're talkers. They don't have the ability to do what this king is asking, and they know they're going to die. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time. I knew you were going to do this. That's what he's telling. I knew you'd delay, you'd hold out, because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. We've seen this in many times throughout different cultures. We'll see it later. We've read about it before when we studied Esther this last year. Remember when the king made a decree? Why was it so emphatic that when a king makes a decree that really there's nothing to do to change that? Why is that so often prevalent in different cultures? The Babylonian culture, later the Persian culture, and others. Why do you think that's the case? Well, he'd undermine himself, right? I mean, so that's why it's so important when you if you're in that position of authority, even today, our leaders have to be careful, right? If you do this, we'll send in this. What if they do it? Are you really going to do? You got to be really careful what you say you're going to do, right? Well, same thing here, but that also holds the king accountable as well, because they can't just flippantly make commands and do things and not stand by him. And so we've seen that backfire on people. But this guy, he's look at, this is the decree. There's one decree. I'm going to kill you if you can't tell me the dream. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. You guys you're in cahoots together. You're working together. You're scared together, and you're trying to figure out. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. This guy's pretty good, because what's he trying now? Almost a reasoning, almost a reverse psychology, right? No other king's done that. Why would you, it's like almost like you're sort of like shaming him into his decision. Well, that's unreasonable. You can't say it's unreasonable, because that won't work. You have to pick your words carefully, right? No other king, ruler, lord's done this, right? Well, it is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there's no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Isn't that interesting? They're right. There is nobody who could tell, no man that could tell this, right? And they're wrong, though, about the idea of their gods. There is no little case gods in this situation that are going to help. For this reason, the king was very angry and very furious and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. He didn't like their reasoning. He gives the orders. They're going to carry out the orders. They're going to kill these people, and they're going to destroy their homes. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Okay, it's not like it's going to happen. It's started happening. They're systematically taking these people out, and now they're looking for Daniel and his companions. Who's the three companions we're talking about? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay, they're on the list. They're part of that group, that collective group. Then, with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. This is the same guy that Daniel had found favor with him, and maybe perhaps that's why he was sort of like delaying. But Daniel says, wait a second, stop. I got to talk to you, right? He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. He tells him what the decision was and what had gone on. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king the interpretation. So Daniel is at least bold enough to go before Nebuchadnezzar and say, give me a little time. And I'm going to, because what's the alternative? I'm dead, right? So does Daniel know if God's going to give him the interpretation? No. He knows that God can, and that's exactly right. And we're going to see that play out in the next chapter as well, that same understanding. And you guys, we should have the same thing. Our God is capable of doing all that is good and powerful, right? Don't let people fall into this arguments. Well, if God can do everything, can he sin? Come on, we're not going to get into these circular arguments. But all that is good, all that is right, is God capable of giving us abilities? Yes. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't make him not God. It doesn't make the situation wrong. So he asked for time. Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from God of heaven concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. What do you think that they began doing? Praying, I can imagine, right? That they would look for God's wisdom. They would pray to God for that help. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. What's a night vision? A dream. He dreamt that dream, and the interpretation was given as well. So Daniel blessed God of heaven. He gives God the glory. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand." What an incredible thing. Now there's this urgency, right? The king's probably not going to wait too long. He's expecting Daniel, I'm sure, soon, right? Daniel wasn't going to ask for too much time, and Daniel goes to him. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation." Do you think a buzz started around the town, around the palace at that point? The killing had stopped. There was some killing that had gone on. That stopped. There's a sort of like a small reprieve, a window of time for Daniel to seek counsel. He gets the blessing. He gets the information from God. He goes and tells Arioch. Arioch goes right to the king. Daniel's coming. The anticipation must have been incredible, even for Nebuchadnezzar. Can this guy really tell me my dream? Would you not be impressed if somebody could do this for you? You see why there's such an important thing that's taught here consistently is that God did wonderful miracles throughout time. There's no doubt about it. But we can understand why it's so critical that miracles of this type aren't going on today. Why would be the reason that would not happen? Why would God see fit to stop these kind of miraculous things from going on? Could you imagine people like trying to take advantage of those things? Could you imagine the confusion that would happen? It would be a problem potentially. We have everything that we need in the Word of God. We don't need this. But in this time, we have to acknowledge what a miraculous thing that's happened, that God would give this information to Daniel in such a supernatural way. And he did it. Verse 25, Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said thus, The secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. That is a very powerful statement to be made. Look, this isn't from man. There's nobody who could do this, but there is a God in heaven, the God, Jehovah, who can do this and has given this information. And this would be so equivalent to what Joseph did to king of Egypt, to Pharaoh. God can give this interpretation, and he gives credit to God. And that's exactly the way we should be. Anything that we have that are blessings in life, any abilities that we have gained, should give God the glory for those things. So, this is what he says. There is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. Man, I can imagine. He'd probably lean forward a little bit. I would. I'd be like, okay. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while you're on your bed about what would come to pass after this. And he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. So he's telling you, what God was telling you is the future. He's giving you insight to what is going to happen in your future. In your future, and in future beyond you. But in your lifetime, things are going to start to change. And he's telling you what that is. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. but for our sakes to make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. Daniel, again, humility right there. This is why God's telling you. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image, an idol, right? This image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze. Now, by this point, does the king know that Daniel has been given the ability to interpret this dream? There is no doubt in his mind when he first said there's this image. And then he goes on to describe the image. It's not like there was this thing you saw. It was nothing like that. It's so specific. It's this man, and his head was of gold, and its chest was of silver, and his arms and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. There's no way he could have guessed this. Nebuchadnezzar, he knows. He knows. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. Chaff is the husk that comes off of the wheat or the grain, whatever you're tossing up. And you ever see why people have those baskets and they're tossing grain up, and every time they're tossing it up, it smashes into itself and it's knocking that husk loose, the chaff, and that they throw it up again and the wind carries it away. Well, that's what's happening to these nations of people, this image. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. He is again, absolutely would be amazed at this right here. Has King Nebuchadnezzar ever seen anything like this? No chance. All those other astrologers, the soothsayers, the Chaldeans, what do you think they're doing right now? The ones that are still alive. Exactly. I wish I could have just put that on the image above us, right? Just, yeah, they're like, this is amazing. I mean, they know pretty quick that this is the real deal right here. This guy really is amazing because he's amazing and he gives credit to his God. You, O king, are the King of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. Now, we have to stop for just a moment and think back. There are so often times that we struggle with civilizations. Just talk about our own. We look at leadership, and we may get angry from term to term, to administration, depending on how we kind of sway politically or the things that are important to us. How often have we just sat there and go, God, you're in control? We say that. God's in control. He's at work. He's allowed this to happen. And we really don't mean it. We really struggle with it. We really hold a lot of anxiety and frustration and anger. God is revealing through Daniel that it's exactly, King Nebuchadnezzar was put in place by God. And some of the things that Nebuchadnezzar did, not just to the Israelites, but to many nations, were horrific. Is it possible that God would allow a man to put a man like this in place, even with all the bad things he did? We have to come to that. We have to understand that the answer is yes, because that is what happened. All we have to do is go back to understand why, and then we can understand that this is just a tool. Nebuchadnezzar was a tool used by God. Everybody can be used by God. Every one of us in this room can be used by God. The question will be will we receive eternal glory with him, or will we be separated from him eternally in a place that we refer to as hell? Everybody in this room can be used by God for his purpose. So you're not immune to this. It's so important for people like a Pharaoh or a Nebuchadnezzar to hopefully understand that they've been used by God, that they've actually been given power by God, and hopefully humble themselves to the point where then they would then serve God. But for God's purpose, he absolutely let this happen. Did you have a comment, Don? I thought you were getting ready to raise your hand.
I was just thinking how that Assyrian Empire, when Nebuchadnezzar began his move,
Right.
it's only to be explained that God caused it.
The providence of God, yes.
Nebuchadnezzar was a nobody
Right.
in a foreign kingdom. And yet, when he started on his move, he went to Nineveh, defeated it. He went on to Haran and defeated the second. And he went on to Carchemish and finally completely wiped out the Assyrians.
Yeah, he shouldn't have had the success he did by his own means and measure. Yeah. Yeah, it was a God thing, is what exactly. Don has, you have so much good knowledge on this that, again, Don's talking about just physically, just who Nebuchadnezzar was and the Babylonians at that time. They shouldn't have had this kind of success. Again, it was God using them to fulfill a purpose that he had. Well, that shouldn't be so different, because look what God did for the Israelites when they went in and routed entire cities. And they had fights with people that were sometimes, 10 times the number of troops. And yet, if God is for us, who can be against us is absolutely applied there. Well, it goes for the same way. So it's an amazing thing. And you, O King, are the King of Kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. God is at work, not just in us, not just here in the United States, all around this world. God is at work doing his will. And we can all we need to do is say is amen. God, whatever God does is right. And he goes on. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hand and has made you ruler over all them. You are the head of gold. Later on, he'll be described as this massive tree that all the life just comes and just basically the birds of the air nest there, the animals are underneath him, everything there, that's like his own ecosystem. He has so much authority, so much power, and so much influence. Well, he's the head of gold. That sounds good, right? Now, would you be happy to be told you're the head of gold on this statue? Would you be happy with that? Not Nebuchadnezzar, we'll see about that. But anyhow, he goes on. But he's going to tell him now, this is the current. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, or a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all others. Whereas you saw the feet, toes, partly of clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. That we will discuss much later on, but just for now, for what he's seeing, this is the telling. As you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. What kingdom is that? Kingdom of Christ, right? The body, the church, the kingdom of Christ. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. Okay, it's interesting here at this point when he makes that last comment here, because the king is absolutely blown away, not just to the fact, if he would have even been half as detailed in that dream, the king would have been amazed. Just the fact that it was about a statue, right, that started to get knocked around, he would have been impressed with that. But to give him such fine details, and he tells him, this is it. It's decided. It's sure. It's not going to change. That's important to understand later. But just for now, it's the way it is. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar is absolutely amazed. And look what his reaction is. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. We have to get our minds around this. Picture this scene. Picture Nebuchadnezzar on some throne. Picture him hearing Daniel, and what was hilarious was probably the fact that all these other magicians and Chaldeans and soothsayers, they don't know if he's talking the truth or not until they see the king's reaction. And they're wondering, is this guy just making this up or what? But when they see their king, who they knew was prepared to kill them, who has such great and awesome power, what does he do? Falls on his face, prostrate. What is that a sign of? What's that? Humble, humility, submission, complete awe. He's reverencing Daniel. He wants to offer offerings to Daniel. I mean, Daniel's got to be a god, right? Who else can do this? Daniel, he's just so overwhelmed by Daniel. He comes off that throne on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. The king answered Daniel and said, truly, your God, isn't that amazing how now in your scriptures it's showing a capital G, your God is the God of gods. Is Nebuchadnezzar right about that? Yes, he is. He's the only God, right? He is the Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets. Since you could reveal this secret, your God is the God. Your God is awesome. Your God has power. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Now that's a pretty good promotion, right? Now, does that seem reasonable that he would do that? Why would he do that? And who does it remind us of? We see the consistency of God in things, right? Joseph, one of the most amazing things about Joseph was how he was treated by the cupbearer who conveniently forgot him after he interpreted his dreams. That went on for a couple of years. And then Potiphar himself, right? You remember how he knew something was special about Joseph because he didn't kill him, right? He would have killed him if he thought that he really tried to rape his wife. But he knew something was special. But now they saw Joseph exalted to be second in command, who meant that they were now subject to him. That's amazing. And so here's all these other people now that are really subject to Daniel because he is now in an official capacity. And we would assume it's just the same kind of relationship, second to only to who? Nebuchadnezzar, right? So he is in a powerful position. Now, this would be similar to, I remember, I think it was Don who brought this up. You might mention about the cupbearer kind of position and the advisory position, I think, Don. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Referencing Daniel in this situation, how he's now this second-hand man. He's like an advisor to Nebuchadnezzar. Were you the one, or was it one of the other brothers who taught about that? You could have been you. Could have some other smart person maybe, but it's really an important situation because now he's in a position of influence. He's never going to lose influence with the king, and we'll see again how that plays out so powerfully. And Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So Daniel doesn't forget his friends. Go ahead.
Also remember, Daniel's pretty young when this happens.
Yeah, relatively, right?
Yeah, he had just finished his 3 years of training.
Right.
Just graduated from this training academy. So he was probably 17-ish at that point. So he might be 18, if that, at this point. So now he's in charge of all these other, advisors that were obviously much, much older.
Sure.
Experienced than him.
Yes.
Here he's in a position where he's the most junior guy getting promoted well above his peers.
Yeah, he is. And again, that's going to show us more of the reason why these guys would be so willing to try to get rid of him, right? And be adversarial to these guys because of their jealousy. They have to believe there was a fear that was in them from just causing them to do something directly to them themselves. but they sure tried, and we'll see how they try even later. They don't give up easily. So Daniel is in this position because God put him there. And, there's so many examples in the Bible where even when Paul tells Timothy, don't let them despise you because of your youth. If God is for us, even our young will speak the truth. Even our young will stand the test and do the right things. It's sort of anticipated that the older we get, the wiser we're supposed to get, the closer we should be getting to God, the better people we would be for the Lord. That should make sense, right? That's not always the case, though. Sometimes we tend to, life tears at us, and we make decisions where we sort of lose our zeal for God, and we almost wonder. We start to wonder. But as a young man, these guys are young, and I appreciate Bill pointing that out. They're not like these aged old men that have all this wisdom. They are in a whirlwind themselves of this situation, and they're young. Now, granted, probably had what they had gone through, their teen years, going through the besieged cities, going through all the terror scene, they grew up quick, right? I mean, you want to see in our own history, go back to the Civil War, and you look at how you look at Captain so-and-so, 22 years old. How in the world did that happen? Well, because everybody else was killed, right? And young people were forced into positions that really were typically held by men of more mature stature, age, and so on. But when the need arises, you can grow up fast. And so they were mature, I'm sure, for their age. Daniel doesn't forget his three friends, and they also are exalted and put in charge of portions of the king's kingdom. Chapter 3, we're going to definitely get into this. Now, remember what I told you about Daniel said that the interpretation was sure? It was set, right? Now, it doesn't mean Nebuchadnezzar is not going to be Nebuchadnezzar. There's a reason God exalted him because he's tenacious and he doesn't stop. The discussions on the besieged cities where they took years to do it, he didn't give up. When he set his mind on something, he was going to see through it. And now he's willing to try to change history. He's just been totally at awe about God, but yet he's going to find his own way. Now, there's application here. People come to the Christ. They see the gospel. They finally understand it. It's something that maybe it's so new to them. It's like they can't believe how simple the gospel is. And they get it, and they obey the gospel, and then life starts to happen, and they start to look for ways to not obey the gospel anymore. We don't need to do that, do we? I don't need to do that, do I? And we sort of like wane on that faith, and we start to think we can change things. Well, that's childishness. That's foolishness. Here's Nebuchadnezzar, who was so in awe of the interpretation and the ability of Daniel that he fell face down. But now he's still a man who still wants to do it his way. And he's going to try to rewrite history. And this is what he'll do. Go ahead.
But at this point, the only thing that Nebuchadnezzar has recognized in relation to God is that God's a revealer of secrets.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
As we go along, that he adds to that knowledge, and eventually it humbles him.
Oh, a complete humility.
He understands now is that God can interpret dreams.
Yeah, that's fair to say. He's not fully appreciated at all. I mean, especially if you were a guy conquering this nation of these people that worship this God, you could think you could change things and do things. Well, that's what he's going to try to do. So this whole discussion on this next part is really him, because look at the statue he makes. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, not bronze, not silver and gold, not clay and gold, not iron and gold, a whole image, head to toe. It's all gold. You think that has any symbolism to the fact that he was the head of gold? Now he wants to be the whole body of gold, right? So what would you think he would be happening in that? What would that mean? Maybe a dynasty, an ongoing, recognition of his family being in this control, being in this power. I mean, that's the ultimate, right? This dynasty that would go on. Well, he's going to try. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, so 90 feet roughly. Its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar set word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. King Nebuchadnezzar is making an effort to change history and to assure that he has complete commitment by all those who would be under his jurisdiction, under his control. All of his officials would come, and they're going to, he's going to have them confirm their allegiance to him, is what he's doing. So the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald cried aloud, "To you is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that the King Nebuchadnezzar has set up." So what is he saying? Simply this: when the music plays, you fall and worship the statue. Who does the statue represent? King Nebuchadnezzar. If you're serving this image, you bow to this image, you're bowing to King Nebuchadnezzar. So we already know historically, right? You shall have no image, you shall make no engraven image. That's a command from who to whom? From God through Moses to the people of Israel. You don't bow down and worship. You don't do that. You don't make images for yourself. You don't bow down to them. You don't worship it. Nothing in heaven, nothing on earth, nothing in the land, nothing on the sea, nothing. No images. Well, we could do angels, right? Angels are heavenly. No, not even in heaven. How about a cross? We got to do a cross. Nothing. No images, right? And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar's intense, right? He doesn't really give a lot of leeway to disobedience. He doesn't give, well, we will talk to you about it. We'll write you up. We'll have to have a discussion with HR, right? No, nothing like that, right? If you don't do what we said, you're going to die. Now, how hard would it be to see who obeys and who doesn't obey? It's going to be difficult, right? No. Whoever's standing, right? Whoever's standing, they're done. That's it. So, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre in symphony with all the kind of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke and said to the King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever." That is such a disingenuous thing. These guys are afraid of this king. They hate him. They're scared to death of him. But that's such a phony thing. "Oh, king, live forever." Yeah, right. Please die tomorrow. That's what they really want to say. But this is it just shows you how disingenuous these people are and what they're going to do now. They have a vendetta they're trying to resolve. "You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in symphony with all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the gold image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace." Is that what the king said? So what they're saying is true. "There are certain Jews whom you have sent over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up." Now let's stop there for a second. Who did he not say? Daniel. Okay, so we have to go back to, remember that he has been exalted to second in command. Do you think Daniel is going to get some leeway that the others may not get? It has to be. Daniel did not fall down and worship that statue. Daniel's not, and that's so important because sometimes when we think life is good for us, we're willing to sacrifice God. I don't need God. My 401k is really solid. I don't think I could spend all the money I've built up. I'm in real good health. I don't think I need to pray much about that. I don't think all my kids are good. I don't think I really need God as much as I thought I did. Well, do you think Daniel, people in a position like that might think that it's so good that they could just go ahead and forsake God and let's go down and worship the statue. Let's fall down and worship it. There's no way Daniel worshiped that statue. That's why I want to pick up next week. We're going to talk about some other references that will help us understand Daniel did not do that. The reality is these men were too afraid to go after Daniel. There's no way they're ready to go after Daniel. not this guy. They'll go after him later individually, but they think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they think they're vulnerable. And they'll start with it. See, they're not going to go after all of us. They'll pick us off one at a time. And we'll leave it at that. Any last thoughts or comments? Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the things that we can learn over and over again and the new things that we will learn when we study your word. You do just show us the amazing power of your word, the living scriptures, Father, that just give us this insight, and thank you for that. Father, continue to help us understand better, help us to apply the things that we learn in our lives, because that's the purpose of our study. Father, thank you for this night. In Christ's name, amen.